Okay, so when you're dealing with another culture, they're going to have different worldviews. They're going to have a difference in what they consider to be valuable. What is valuable to me is not necessarily valuable to you. So you are with 3 different Muslims: an American, an Indonesian, and a Kuwaiti. And you ask them what is considered important to you. They're going to give you 3 different answers. Okay? And from person to person, it's going to vary. But even culturally, you go to an American and independence is very important. You go to an Indonesian and they're going to say family is important. You go to a Kuwaiti and they might say my nation is important. The worldview is different. The value systems are different. Each and every single one of us has a unique worldview and value system, but culturally, ethnically, also this changes. Even within the United States, you are in America and you are dealing with a family from a Latino background. Family is more important to them than, say, somebody from a Germanic background. Independence is more important to somebody, say, from an original founding fathers of the United States type of family, okay? So even within the same culture, the same country, the same religion, this is going to change. So when you're dealing with someone, it's a problem in terms of culture. It's a problem in terms of, even within the culture, there are subcultures. And you have to learn that. I had to learn that here. When I came to Kuwait, I'm thinking all Arabs are the same. Not even all Kuwaitis are the same. All Arabs are the same. Okay? My worldview on Arabs is the guy on the camel going to the tent. I really had very little information before I came to Kuwait. So I'm dealing with this, and then I realized I'm surrounding myself now with a Bedouin family, a very traditional Bedouin family. I start to meet other people. When I'm meeting the other people, what did I learn? Oh, this is a Hadar family. The Hadar family has slightly different values, slightly different worldview than that Bedou family. I remember, because when I came here, my husband was a Bedouin. So I met a girl at an Islamic center. She was from the same tribe. Okay, so now it's time for my education. This girl, I said to her, oh, this is nice. We got to know each other. We talked a lot. I see her like 2 or 3 times later in the same Islamic center. And I was like, why don't you come visit me? Oh, no. I'm not allowed to visit you. You're not allowed to visit me? No. Your family is from this branch of the tribe. My family is from this branch of the tribe. I can only enter their house if I'm invited with my entire family for a special dinner. It's the only time I'm allowed to go to their house. I'm like, but you're not going to their house, you're coming to my apartment. No, it's the house. And then she's like, and you cannot come to my house. I'm like, I'm not even an Arab. Like, no. You cannot come to my house, I cannot come to your house, it's against the rules. And I'm sitting there going, what? I don't understand this. Because it's not my value system, it's not my worldview, it's not the way that I look at things. So here I am with someone from the same tribe, and I still can't visit with her. We ended up visiting each other at her brother's house. And only because her brother was educated in America, and he's like, oh, it's okay, I get this. Otherwise, I probably could never have visited with her. So you have to understand the differences. What about even within the Bedouins? This is just Kuwait. Within Bedou to Bedou, the Azmis versus the Harbis versus the Shemari versus the Anezis versus the whatever, the Rashidis.
The Bloods versus the Crips.
The Bloods versus the Crips. You have to understand the differences even within the culture that you're choosing. So I will give everybody a suggestion. If you want to do some kind of cross-cultural communication, choose one. Choose who you're going to deal with and immerse yourself. Understand, not become like them. Don't go out dating. Immerse yourself and understand the culture. And learn the subcultures within the culture so that when you deal with them, you're not insulting anybody, you're not looking down on anybody, you don't have stereotypes, you don't have prejudices, because you understand what's going on. Missionary work often carries with it the assumption of cultural superiority and can lead to cultural imperialism. If you are going as a missionary, a da'iya, somebody who wants to convert somebody from one religion to another religion, do not go in with this I am superior to you attitude, because you will never get through to the person. You have to go in with an informational, what do you call it? An intention that I am going to provide the information. This is what I understand. This is the facts that lead to that. This is how I understand it. This is why I understand it. You have questions, ask me. Let me answer the questions, but I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. You don't know what I know. And I don't know what you know. So we are coming out on an equal footing. Do not put in your brain, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Yes, we were built in the best, right? And we are coming down. Why? Because we're not doing what Allah says. We are not telling people right and telling people what's wrong. We are not giving information. I can give you information. Can I make you do it? No. I cannot force you to do it. That is a cultural imperialism. There is no force in Islam. You cannot force somebody to pray. You cannot force somebody to believe La ilaha illallah. You can force them to pretend. You can force them to do an action, but are they really praying? Are they really doing the salah? Well, if the intention is not there, the only reason I'm doing it is because I don't want to be beat, then you're not having them make salah. So we cannot force it. We cannot make the assumption that we are here to save you, even if our intention with Allah is we want to save them. Do you see the distinction? When you're dealing with the people, it has to be done with wisdom. Dawa in Islam is done with wisdom. You don't go to, again, remember the example I told you, the man and the woman, they come in here and they're boyfriend and girlfriend. You don't start with that, because they're not going to accept that if they don't believe there's only one God. Why would they listen to what you have to say? You can tell them, well, culturally we don't do this. Okay. If they're respectful, they're going to follow the culture. If they're not respectful, what are they going to do? Who are you to tell me who I can be with and who I can't be with, right? So we have to have a kind of wisdom, and we have to have the assumption that we are not necessarily superior, because the difference between me and him or me and her could only be a matter of knowledge and information. The minute they know that this is something correct, they will change like this and they will be better than I am. And I've seen this. I've dealt with people. I've had, alhamdulillah, a lot of people come to Islam. And I have seen people that, in California, when I was teaching at USC, I was giving a lecture on feminism in Islam and feminism in the West. And during the lecture, I made a statement. During that statement, now, if I had seen this girl on the street, I would never, ever, ever imagine any of what happened. But I was giving the lecture, I said that in the United States, from every 5 women, by the time they reach 21 years old, 3 have been sexually molested. FBI statistics. And these are the ones that are reported. A girl stood up in the audience and said, that's not true. I don't know any human being, any woman that's ever been raped. The girl sitting right next to her stood up and said, and she started crying, I did, her best friend. This girl had a mohawk that was rainbow colored. She had piercings everywhere you can see. She had tattoos. She was like out there. Yeah. And the clothes that she was wearing, mashallah. Okay? And they hugged and they kissed and they were, you know, whatever. We continued our lecture. At the end of the lecture, I told people I have a lecture every, and whatever day it happened to be, I don't remember because it was a while back. And I was telling them, I have this lecture, come join us. I'm teaching Islam. So the following class, that girl was there. That girl came to my class. She was with us for a year. She became a Muslim. Head to toe in black. She went from this to that. I would never, in the greatest of imaginations, have thought that that girl that was sitting in that row would ever become the Muslim woman that I saw. So, subhanAllah, you don't know. But if you are going to assume I'm better than you, you're never going to get anybody to follow what you're trying to teach them. Now, on top of your verbal communication, nonverbal gestures in some cultures, certain hand gestures or body language may be different, have a different meaning, or be considered offensive, as I pointed out earlier with the thumbs. For example, the thumbs up gesture is positive in many Western cultures, but in some countries like Greece and the Middle East, it can be seen as obscene or vulgar. So when you are dealing with these things, you need to know that it's not just what we say, it's what we do, our gestures. It is our physical appearance. It is our cleanliness. It is our smell. It is our movements. It is our attitude. It is our wisdom. It is a lot of different things that have to all come together to make that person even want to listen to what you have to say. So when you're communicating, communication is a full range. Language barriers. Misunderstandings can arise from differences in languages, usage, and idiomatic expressions. And I gave you the example, Allah yatik al-afiyah. If I say it to one person, thank you. I say it to another, why are you insulting me? Why are you asking for the fire for me? Subhanallah, Morocco, exactly. So the same thing in the same language can have different meanings. So what about from one language to another? You're making a statement in Arabic and you're translating it in your brain and making it English. Either it's going to make zero sense, okay, or it's going to have a completely different meaning. I'll give you the example in America. You're with a friend and you're laughing and joking and you're having a good time and say, oh, you're crazy. No big deal. You're not saying you are a lunatic, you have a mental illness. You're saying you're fun and I like to be around you type of information. Say this to an Arab. Oh, you're crazy. Why are you calling me crazy? Why? Because in Arabic, inta majnoon means what? You are literally mentally ill, crazy. Huh? Yes, insane. So you can't just translate from your language to another person's language and assume that they're saying the same thing. If somebody says something to you, do not assume. And this is very important. We make assumptions that they're insulting us. They don't know that they're insulting us because they're talking their own language. And you supposedly speak that language, so you should not get upset. Okay? Not just the language. As I said, a literal phrase can have a different meaning. It can be offensive. But also the tone of your voice. The tone of your voice. I remember when I had first gotten married, my husband was on the phone with his father. His father was in Kuwait and we were in America. And he was very loud. And he was just like going, big, loud voice. And when he got off, I was like, how could you yell at your father like that? I wasn't yelling.
We were talking.
We were talking, exactly. But my American sensibility said what?
It's yelling.
They're yelling at each other. They're fighting with each other. They're angry with each other. It's like, no, we weren't yelling. We were talking, just normal talking. Okay, this is different culturally. I did not know. I learned. We need to learn. If you're dealing with someone and you're trying to convince them, there are ways to convince that are different from one culture to another. The logical progression between this and that is different. Especially, I've noticed, like with being in Kuwait, notice that Arab logic and logical progression is different from American logic and American logical progression. We go by A. If A is true, B is true, and B is true, then C is true. And we look for this kind of logic. Doesn't necessarily happen here. I remember with my son, I told him I was sitting with these people and we're having a discussion and I'm telling them about X and they're bringing in Y and Z. What does Y and Z have to do with X? I didn't understand. And I was like, it wasn't logical to me. I don't know what they were arguing. We were arguing two entirely different things. It's like, no, this is wrong. One of the examples, okay. Talking about women who wear hijab and women who don't wear hijab, okay? I made a statement that if you wear hijab, then I know that you're at least trying to follow the religion. If you're not wearing hijab, I know that in that place, you're deficient, okay? That is logical. Allah said, wear hijab. You decided not to wear hijab, therefore, in that situation, you're deficient.
Yeah.
A is true, B is true, C must be true. They started arguing that there are millions of women who don't wear hijab, but their hearts are very good. And there are women who wear hijab and their hearts are very bad. Okay, I agree. I'm not saying that. I said, if you don't wear hijab, when Allah said wear hijab, you are disobeying Allah in that command. And only in that. You may be praying and fasting and doing everything else. It doesn't mean that you don't have to wear hijab. It's still part of Islam. You understand?
You're taking it from a subjective point of view.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Arab lady that I was dealing with was yelling at me and screaming at me that wearing hijab doesn't make you a good Muslim. We agree on that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something different. But when I told my son about this, he's like, yeah, that's the way we think. That's the way we argue. That's the way we do it. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. He's like, if you're going to deal with an Arab, you need to learn to do this. If they're going to deal with an American, the Arab needs to learn to do it this way. You cannot convince someone with that argument.
Deductive reasoning.
Deductive reasoning. But you cannot deal. Let's see. Okay, good. You cannot deal with a Westerner using Arab logic. You cannot deal with an Arab using American logic. It's not going to work. You have to understand. You have to understand their perspective. You have to understand the culture. You have to understand the way that they argue. Now, when we talk about cultural norms and taboos, what is considered acceptable or inappropriate behavior can vary greatly across cultures. Example, something that's normal in one culture is considered rude or disrespectful in another. In some cultures, it's common to maintain eye contact during a conversation as a sign of attentiveness. And in other cultures, if you look at someone too long, you are being confrontational. So if I'm going to be dealing with an American or with a Brit, and we're talking, we're going to be looking at each other. If I'm going to be talking with an Arab man, and I am a woman, then I should not be giving him direct eye contact. Because when I do that, I am saying to him, I like you.
Yes.
Hit on me, please.
Yes.
It's a different cultural context. I had to learn this. I never understood why women in Kuwait, they drive like this, they don't look at their mirrors, they don't look to the side. Until I started getting chased everywhere by men going with their phones. Why? Because it's a completely different mentality. Eye contact has completely different connotations. I literally had seen my teenage son looking in the direction of a woman. She was looking in his general direction. I don't think she was looking at him. And he's like, she fell. Really? Come on. You've got to change your perspective. You cannot give everybody the same cultural understanding, and you have to learn it. You have to learn the difference. This happened in Mecca. A friend of mine made Hajj, and she's sitting there waiting for her husband. And she's just sitting on a corner waiting for her husband who had gone in to make wudu. And this man walked by her, and she got worried. In America, you're worried about someone, you think that they might come and hurt you or do something or whatever. So she started staring him down. He eventually came over to her and asked her how much.
Oh my God.
She was staring him down because she's like, don't approach me type of thing, looking directly at this guy. His mentality, she wants me. She wants me very badly. Completely different cultural understanding.
And that's Hajj.
And that was in Hajj, a'udhu billah. Different perceptions of time. Y'all know this one. The concept of time can be interpreted differently in various cultures. Some cultures prioritize punctuality and adhere strictly to schedules. And others are a little more relaxed.
A little too relaxed.
Yes, this can lead to frustration, misunderstandings, because they're going to have different expectations regarding what is on time. I had to learn this when I first came to Kuwait as well. Not only am I an American, I'm an American daughter of a military man. 3 o'clock means 3 o'clock, not 3:01, not 3:02, 3 o'clock. So you will be there at 3 o'clock, and not a minute later. Maybe up to 2 or 3 minutes before, but you will be there. I was invited to a dinner at a Kuwaiti house. And it was actually, this person was like kind of up in Kuwaiti society. So I was anxious and I wanted to be there on time. 7 o'clock, she said be there. 7 o'clock, I was knocking on the door. Exactly. I literally waited around the corner. I was early until 7 o'clock. Then I came in, parked my car, and knocked on the door. Where do you think she was?
Not home.
She was home, upstairs getting dressed. I sat for an hour alone in the living room because nobody else had shown up. Because 7 o'clock in Kuwait doesn't mean 7 o'clock. It has a completely different meaning, right?
What time do we start
Very
today?
true.
What time do we start today?
Yeah, what time? I learned after many bad experiences, I'll tell the person, what time, American time, do you want me to be walking in the door?
American.
Because she'll be like, oh, we're starting at 6. I'm like, what time do you really want me to be there? 7:30. Okay. Tell everybody else 6 o'clock. Tell me 7:30 because I can't. It's one of my failings. So you have to understand the differences in the culture and you have to try to go with it. Now, problem examples. Shaking hands in America. Shaking hands in America, in the West, this is very important. You walk up to a person, you put out your hand, and you give a strong shake, male or female.
Yeah.
And this shows your confidence. Oops. No? Seriously?
Next one was really.
Yeah, it has my list, which I'm gonna need. Let me quickly fix that. There we go. That's it?
Most people just
Yeah.
get like a fish handshake.
Yes. But even at that, you have to know the perception. Now, what I have found from my own personal experience, shaking hands in America, it's also twofold. As a Muslim, I never had a problem with the concept of shaking hands and telling a man I don't shake hands. Why? Because the men get it. They understand it. I tell a man, I remember once I was working at a college and one of the professors came in and he went to shake hands and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't shake hands with men. He's like, my mother told me that one day I'd run into a lady who refused to shake my hand. I finally met a lady. Another time, also when I was working at one of the colleges, the guy who works and fixes the lab equipment, I was working in the computer lab at that time, he comes in and he goes to shake hands and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't shake hands with men. He's like, oh, I wish my girlfriend was like that. She lets anybody touch her anyhow. So they get it.
Yeah.
Women, if a man says I won't shake hands with you, you have to understand the feminist teachings is that men consider women inferior. The feminist teachings is that Muslim men really consider women to be inferior. And that if they touch a woman, they won't touch a woman because it's considered dirty. They're getting this information. So when you go to a woman and she tries to shake hands with you, and you say no, she gets insulted because she has this already in her mind. So you need to, as a man in the West or dealing with a Western woman, and you want to tell them, say, we don't shake hands because of this, and go into the explanation. You don't have to explain to a man. If you're a woman, they get it. But you have to explain it to the women because they have that upbringing and idea that we are inferior, we have to be equal or better than men. So subhanAllah.
Sharifa, my auntie got remarried and I went there for the summer, and his name's Tom, and he's an older gentleman, mashallah, and then he put his hand out. It's the first time I met him, and I said, I put my hand on my chest and I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And he said, oh, I offended you. And I was like, no, you didn't offend me actually. It's just something that I don't do as a Muslim woman with other men, And then he was like, oh, but he felt like he's a Brit, I'm a Brit.
Right.
But it was just like, I have a religion and I'm trying my best to follow it. So
Yes.
yeah.
So, but for a woman, it's normally easier.
Right. Yeah.
Kissing by men.
I got a lot of funny looks when I was in America.
Oh.
With other Kuwaitis and Saudis.
Yes, you have that little kissing
What are
thing
you
going
doing
on,
over
and
there?
it can be disconcerting, but if you don't know. So this is something that in the West you have to know that this is not a normal behavior, and explain it. You don't have to change your behavior, explain to people. I remember when I first started work here in Kuwait, I was at my orientation in my boss's office. I'm sitting there and he's sitting behind his desk and he's explaining to me what I'm supposed to be doing, my duties, etc. as a professor. And one of the other Kuwaiti professors came in, walked behind the desk, and they started the whole, back and forth, 200,000 kisses on each cheek. And subhanAllah, they both looked at me and jumped back away from each other. And they said, we're not gay, we're not gay. Because that is the understanding that a Westerner might have. And I was like, no, I understand that.
And they call us homophobic.
Yes. The funny thing is that I did see it in myself later. I'd say like 1 or 2 years later, I'm at the airport waiting for somebody to come in, and I see these 2 Arab men not doing the normal hug and kiss thing.
The nose?
The nose.
The nose.
And I was just like, oh my God, those 2 men kissed.
Yeah, I saw it on the TV.
I was shocked because I had never seen it before. So
here.
it's a cultural thing. If you don't know, you don't know that you don't know, right? Yelling. The yelling, the high voices, or even the getting angry and raising the voice from culture to culture. This can be traumatizing.
Yeah.
You could keep someone away from 100% anything to do with the opinion that you have because you start yelling. In dawa, in dawa here, I find that when people are teaching others about Islam, there's an emphasis on help with very little on mercy.
Yes.
If you're trying to talk to someone and you want to change them, let's say from one religion to another, Christianity to Islam, you're not going to dwell on hell on a people whose entire religion is based on mercy and love.
Yes.
There are no rules, there are no regulations, there's mercy and there's love. For God so loved the world, he gave his only son. This is what it's based on. You don't have to really do anything. You're supposed to just naturally be good because he died for you. So, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, is going to turn them off. So you have to be understanding of the culture. There may be a culture that is going to work. So then you have to put the emphasis on that.
I have a question here, please. So would it be better to have the emphasis like on a more logical argument in terms of the perception of God himself, and he couldn't have sacrificed his son because it would basically intervene with the whole point, or the whole point of a higher power and the God, and just go towards the logical path.
When you're dealing with someone, now again, you need to look at the culture.
Yeah.
I give a class on how to make dawa.
Okay.
You need to talk to and understand the individual. If this individual is an emotional type,
Yeah.
you deal with emotion. If this individual is highly logical, you deal with logic. If this person is scientific, you deal with science. You
Yeah.
find the thing that person is affected by, how their life is guided. So that you can only do this by starting with the communication. So we go through the communication, you have your basics in line. Now I'm dealing with a person one-to-one, okay? When you're dealing with the person one-to-one, then you start to see. About 2 weeks ago, it was about 2 weeks ago, because I've been in Kuwait for a week, almost a week, less than 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
a few days before I left America. I was at the mosque, and while I'm at the mosque, we have like outside like a picnic area where people sit. So after the salah, I came out, there was this woman sitting there, non-Muslim or a woman without hijab, very clearly American. And I didn't see anybody sitting with her, so I said, shouldn't leave her alone. I went and sat with her. And we start talking. While we're talking, she's telling me, yeah, my brother's a Muslim, and he brought me here, and I kept trying to tell him I don't want to come here, but I do like what he's telling me about Islam, but I don't really want to be a Muslim. I believe in so many of the things that he's doing, and I see what good character he has. And she was talking so highly of her brother.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing here is something stopping her. I'm talking to her, I'm having conversation, and I'm noticing she likes Islam. She likes the behavior.
Yeah.
She believes that there's only one God, that Jesus isn't God. She already had this foundation.
Yeah.
So by talking to her, I figured that out. So what do you think I said to her?
What?
What's stopping you? What is the thing that bothers you?
Uh-huh.
What is the thing that makes you not want to be a Muslim? And she told me. I addressed that. Alhamdulillah, an hour later, she took her shahada.
MashaAllah.
So you have to
Tackle the problem.
tackle all of this. Now with me, this was easy. She was a Southern woman in South Carolina. I'm a Southern woman in South Carolina, no problem,
Yeah.
right? But then you go into if you want to make dawah to someone, you want to convince someone, this is how we do it,
Yes.
okay? The next thing, my daughter-in-law is Turkish. She doesn't say no. To me, that's like, bad.
Yeah.
To her, no.
Yeah.
So when she does it, I know, logically, there's nothing wrong. She's not tisking me.
Yes.
She is just saying no in her traditional way that she grew up with. But it's still in back of my head, it's like, that is so rude. I can't, you can't get past it 100%. And I've told her, I said, I get it. let's try to lower that a little bit because it really bothers me. And she tries. Hand gestures, eye contact. Do you give contact? Do you not give contact? You don't denigrate, degrade, humiliate anyone. Don't ever say anything that makes the person feel that you are thinking they are less than you in any way, shape, or form. And logical progression. You need to know that culture, how they build an argument. Every culture has a different way of building an argument. Every culture. So you need to understand that culture's way of building an argument, and you have to tailor your argument to their way, not your way. Don't expect them to follow your way. Change the way that you do it. Learn the way they do it and do it their way. Okay? And follow me. Subhanahu wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa iyyakum. Okay, so now if we have questions, yeah, you turn it off?
You want me to turn it off?
Yeah.
Okay, bismillah.